Hello, my name is Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
And it's been a long time since I've made a video. So, I have recently purchased another controller, a Roland A50 controller. It's circa 1989. I wanted another controller that would complement my MIDI board. So the MIDI board has these beautiful, 88 beautiful weighted keys with Polyphonic Aftertouch. I wanted something that had synth keys but also still had Polyphonic Aftertouch. So you put all those parameters together and your options are pretty darn limited. And it just so happens that I found a terrific deal for a Roland A50 on eBay. And it was a terrific deal, and B, nobody else bid on it. So I don't know, maybe other people know something that I don't, or maybe I know something that other people don't. Who knows? It remains to be seen. So I picked this up and ran into a bug with the Polyphonic Aftertouch. So what I'd like to do is take you guys through a little bit about what Polyphonic Aftertouch is. I kind of touched upon it in my first video, but I'll spend a few more minutes on it and give you guys an overview and a little bit of a demonstration. And then I'll show you what the bug is, and I'll show you a couple of the techniques that I used to try to fix it, and show you some of the quirks associated with those workarounds. So I'll tell you right now, I don't have the perfect fix yet, but I know what is entailed in creating the perfect fix. So anyway, you guys will see at the end of the video. By the way, I don't know if you can see my screen, although I am recording it, so you will see my screen eventually, but I'm not using Pro Tools anymore. I'm using Reaper. I just got sick of Pro Tools, and for a fraction of the price, Reaper just gave me so much more flexibility and so much more stability. So, and I think for personal use, Reaper is what, $60, and that gives you updates through the next 2 major versions, and they're constantly updating it. It's well coded. It's, like I said, it's stable. So I've been extremely happy with it. I tried upgrading to Pro Tools 12, which is the latest and greatest, or at least it was as of the recording of this video, and I found no improvement in stability whatsoever. And meanwhile, all of the MIDI flexibility and the MIDI routing flexibility that I have in Reaper, I have none of that in Pro Tools. So and the fact that in Reaper I have choices as to what kinds of plugins that I run, whereas in Pro Tools they really want you to run AAX, or if you're in older versions of Pro Tools, RTAS, and that's pretty much it. And I want flexibility and I want stability. Reaper gives me that. Pro Tools has given me none of that. So that's why I've switched over. Anyway, back to the topic at hand, which is the A50 and Polyphonic Aftertouch. Let me give you guys a maybe a 5-minute rundown on what Polyphonic Aftertouch is, because if you do searches on the internet, there's a lot of confusion out there as to what Polyphonic Aftertouch is versus Channel Aftertouch, or otherwise known as Monophonic Aftertouch or Mono Aftertouch, or just plain old Aftertouch. So what I've done is I've got my MIDI board set up, and the MIDI board has the ability to send either Polyphonic Aftertouch or Channel Aftertouch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the MIDI board to only send, there we go, so parameter 12, value 1. So this is setting Channel Aftertouch on, Polyphonic Aftertouch is off. We go to our good old friend the Blofeld, which can do both monophonic pressure and polyphonic pressure as modulation sources. So in this case, I've set up a sound. This is actually the primary sound that I used in my cover of Rush's Losing It. Actually, my obese evil twin brother did that cover of the song. Anyway, yes, Blofeld, monophonic pressure. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set Channel Aftertouch or monophonic pressure to pitch. And let's just crank it way up. So if I play a sound and don't really manipulate the pressure too much, it'll sound like that. And then if I put down some pressure, So you can hear what it does to manipulate the pitch. But above and beyond that, if I play a series of notes, let's just play a chord, we'll do an F minor chord, and I'm just going to put pressure on the last note of the chord. So even though I'm only putting pressure on that last note, on this C in this case, it's affecting all of the notes the same way. So I can't tweak the notes individually. Basically, it's monophonic, so it's affecting everything. It's kind of an all or nothing thing. So what we can do, again, this is one of the great things about the Blofeld is that you can sort of modify anything with anything. Is one of the available modulation sources is polyphonic pressure. So if we change, whoops, let's go back a screen. Let's change our source to poly pressure. We're still modulating pitch. And now, if we go back to our MIDI board, what we need to do is we need to turn polyphonic pressure, that's parameter 11. We need to turn him on, and we need to turn channel aftertouch off. So we do that, and I'll play the same chord, and again, I'm only going to apply pressure on the last note here. Again, in this case, it's the C. So you can actually hear how I accidentally applied pressure to the middle note, but I never applied any accidental pressure to the F. So you can hear how you can now affect individual notes by applying pressure to individual notes. So let me do kind of a larger chord here where I'll hold down some bass notes. So perhaps not the most musical thing in the world in this particular instance, but you get the idea. You can affect individual notes by applying pressure on each note rather than having basically the highest level of pressure that you applied across the entire keyboard, having that apply to every single note that you're playing. So it's a nice feature to have. It's fairly rare, although getting a bit more common these days. So now you're starting to see little portable controllers like this guy, the CME X Key, and all of the variants that have come out recently from CME. There's the Keith McMillan Q Nexus, I believe is what it's called, which is, I don't have one, but it's sort of more see, it doesn't really, it's more pads like this, but it's done kind of in the style of a chromatic keyboard. That has polyphonic aftertouch as well. And then you have things like the Roland A50s, which can do polyphonic aftertouch, but then they have a half dozen other dimensions that you can play with, where depending on where you put your finger on the key, it can affect the sound. Just that opens up entire new worlds of flexibility and expression within your playing. But anyway, those are also ridiculously expensive. So I will stick with the polyphonic aftertouch that I've been able to get in the MIDI board, and have been hoping to get out of the Roland A50. So the A50 and its big brother, the A80, came out in the late 80s. I think that they came out in 1989. The A80 was the 88 key weighted variant, whereas the A50 is 76 keys and it's synth action. A good synth action, but a synth action nonetheless. The A80 in particular was notorious for having very poor aftertouch sensitivity, where you really have to hammer into it and lean into it in order to trigger the aftertouch. The A50, there's not as much information that you'll find on the internet about it. But what I found with mine is that I don't have that problem with it. So again, you'll see that there's a very significant bug, But the actual sensitivity itself of the aftertouch function is actually pretty good on that. It's pretty much spot on, and it lets you adjust the aftertouch curves. So you know, if you don't like the response out of the box, you can tweak it to your liking. But I have not found that I really need to lean into it in order to get it to trigger properly. It triggers just fine. However, there's a significant gotcha with that. So let's go to our A50 now. First of all, let me take this plug-in out of the line here. And we still have polyphonic pressure enabled on our Blofeld as our modulation source. So, and if we go to our A50 and look at our curves and specifically our aftertouch, we can see that it is set to use polyphonic aftertouch. So great. So let's play some notes and enjoy us some polyphonic aftertouch. All right, here we go. And let's polyphonic WTF? Why am I not getting any aftertouch? So your first thought might be, well, you know, maybe it's an issue with the sensitivity. If you look, and again, hopefully you'll be able to see this on the GoPro here. See this little arrow? He tracks the pressure that you're applying. And if you can see that on your screen, I'm not having to really kill this key in order to get it to max out. In fact, it feels pretty natural, especially with this particular curve. So it's definitely sensing my aftertouch playing, but it's not actually doing anything. So let's do this. Let's set the Blofeld back to monophonic pressure. Let's set the A50 to again a channel aftertouch, mono aftertouch, two ways to say the same thing. And let's play a few notes. Again, I'm going to play some notes and only put pressure on the last one. So we know that the A50 is capable of sending aftertouch, or at least channel aftertouch, and we know that the functionality is working. So let's try to figure out why polyphonic aftertouch isn't working. So let's go back to our Blofeld, and again we'll set our modulation source back to poly pressure, and it's still affecting pitch. And again, I wouldn't normally do this in a purely musical setting, but this way, by setting it to pitch, you guys can very clearly hear what's going on. It's the problem with a lot of polyphonic aftertouch demos that I've seen online is that it's very subtle and folks can't really easily hear the distinction. So what I'm trying to do for you guys is make it so that you can very clearly hear the distinction between channel and polyphonic aftertouch. So I've got MIDI aux open, and this is showing me you know, all of my MIDI traffic. So let's play, let me see, this will probably be, what, a D4? Yeah, a D4, okay. So you can see right here the note on and note off information. And that's it. I didn't sustain the note long enough to get any more MIDI information out of it than that. So we've got our A50 set to polyphonic aftertouch. Let's hold down a note, change the pressure, and see what the MIDI information looks like. Aha, and there's the problem. There's the bug. So you can see that I played, oh, let me go back here. I played a D4, but the aftertouch information being sent over MIDI is 3 octaves above that. It's a D7. And then that keeps going until I stop playing the note, and it sends the note off information correctly. It says that, okay, you stopped playing a D4, but there's clearly a bug in the code on this A50. And if you do a little bit of research online, you can find some very, well, like 1 or 2 old posts in some old news groups where folks talk about this. And then there's one somewhat recent post with a guy who, I can't remember if his was an A50 or an A80, but he ran into the same sort of problem. I had a couple thoughts as to how to fix this. So one of the thoughts that I had is, well, a transpose function, a transpose plugin, is most likely not going to transpose the aftertouch information. So what if I do this? Let me go to my board here, on my A50. Let me transpose him down 3 octaves, so minus 36. Now let me go to my plugin, and let me transpose him up 3 octaves. Let's see what happens then. So the notes should end up back where they were. But again, because the transpose plugin here isn't modifying Aftertouch, he should fall into the right place as well. So let's play a few notes. Hey. So that's working. You could hear that I was putting pressure on this note. It's not affecting the chord. Okay, great. Problem solved, right? Well, not exactly. Let's start playing some low notes. So that one's okay. Uh-oh. Bad news. So what's happening down here is that this is transposing so low that the MIDI notes that it's sending, and we can take a look at this in MIDI aux, as we go from C minus 1, which is, I believe is the lowest MIDI note that you can send, down all the way up to G9. It basically, it flips over, flips back to the other end of the keyboard. I'm not entirely sure, but what might be happening is that you know, this might be the hex code 00 for the MIDI note. And then, well, you can't go lower, that you can't have negative numbers in this code stream. So it just, the counter sort of flips back to the highest possible number that you can send for MIDI note data. So I think that's what's happening. So that doesn't quite work, because that means that I can't use these notes. And while it's only a small section of the keyboard, it's still kind of a bummer. So I had the thought that, well, that might not work, but you can edit these JavaScript plugins. So I did so. And again, try doing any of this in Pro Tools. Forget about it. You won't be able to do it. So if we go through here, we can see that there are references to the MIDI off note. So that's this hex code 80, and the hex 90 is note on. So note on, note off. And you'll see references to that. Actually, you can see that in the code here. So 90 is a note on message, 80 is a note off message. So I thought, okay, after doing some research, the hex code for Polyphonic Aftertouch is A0. So what if I just hacked this and just did a global replace of 80 and 90 for A0? So instead of this code here manipulating the note on and note off messages, it would leave those alone, but modify and manipulate the polyphonic aftertouch messages instead. Okay, let's give it a shot. So I've done that, and that's going to be this version of the plugin just here. So let me change my transpose on my A50. We'll send him back to 0. We'll go in here, and instead we'll crank him down to -36. So what this is doing is the MIDI notes on and off messages are being unaffected. The polyphonic aftertouch messages, which are being sent 3 octaves too high, those are being transposed down 3 octaves. So those should be getting basically put back to normal, where they should be. So we play, and sure enough, that seems to work. Okay, and if we go to our low notes, okay, great. Uh-oh. Nuts. So, this is a problem. So, we can get all the way through to this G, which is G9, good old G9 again. Actually, I take it back, he's G6. But the problem is that the Roland, oh, this, why is doing that? Why? Okay, guys, I'm back. Always gremlins when making videos. What are you gonna do about it? Nothing you can do about it, except learn and move on. So let's go back to MIDI aux. So our G6, that guy gets transposed to G9. If we go up to G#6, unfortunately, I think G9 is as high as MIDI notes will go. So if we put the Poly Aftertouch on him, what note gets sent? Yeah, so you can see that it's sending, it's basically wrapping around. Because there is no such note as a G#9, the next available note it flips back to C-1. So if I had a C-1 down here, we'd be able to hear his Poly Aftertouch going crazy as I manipulate this guy. So long story short, my fix here, my little edit, didn't do the trick either. So what I need to do at some point is write a little JavaScript that will handle these notes appropriately. So basically it'll transpose C-1 through, it looks like it'll probably be B, either B-1 or B1. I'll have to see which one it is. Probably B1 or B0. I don't know, it probably goes to 0, so it'll probably be B0. Why don't we see, actually, rather than speculate, let's go to MIDI aux and find out. So I'm playing my highest G, that's a G7. Oh no, it is B-1. All right, well, learn something new every day. So I'll have to write some code into this JavaScript that accounts for those notes individually, and then puts the aftertouch into the correct places. So a little bit of a pain, but at the end of the day, I should have it so that I have, it's a workaround for the bug that's in this, this code in my A50. A little bit of a bummer, but I think at this point, well, I might contact Roland and see if there's anything they can do for me, but it is highly unlikely that, you know, a board that was made not quite 30 years ago, that they would be willing to do any sort of support on it at this point. So, oh well, that's what you get for buying used equipment on eBay, right? So let me turn back around here. Let me make sure that we still have audio recording. We do. Okay, great. So, all right, guys. Well, this was a quickie. I hope that it was educational and entertaining. Maybe you learned something about polyphonic aftertouch. Maybe if you have an A50 and you were wondering all these years why your polyphonic aftertouch didn't work, it's not that it wasn't working. It was just transmitting on the wrong notes. So maybe or A80, I should say, because this bug also, I believe, applied to some earlier versions of the A80 as well. So, hopefully somebody out there on the interwebs will discover this video and find it useful. So in the meantime, I'm hoping that I can make some more videos in the near future. Again, I apologize. It's been a heck of a long time since I came out with my last video. Hey, life unfortunately has gotten in the way. This is clearly not my day job. So, in between day job and my two beautiful twin baby girls who are fortunately resting very peacefully. We can actually see in the baby monitor here that you can hear their noise machine. We have the sounds of the ocean going right now, and you can see the meter sort of going up and down as the ocean swells and then retreats, and then swells and retreats, and so on and so forth. It's quite relaxing. I don't know if you can hear it in here. Let me crank this up. I don't know if it puts them to sleep, but it sure as heck puts me to sleep. Hopefully this video did not put you guys to sleep. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Go to Facebook and join my Facebook group, or like me on Facebook at, it's not a group, just like me at facebook.com/the Synthesizer Addict. Go to Twitter and follow me at synth_addict. And if you want to email me and perhaps get your question read on the air, you can email me at thesynthesizeraddict@gmail.com. That is it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time. Bye-bye.